Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Maria Valdesera.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar event. We appreciate you joining us today for this webinar on data.census.gov news and updates. My name is Maria Valdesera, and I'm your host for today's event. Today, our presenter will explore the latest and most exciting updates on data.census.gov from February to October 2024. I want to thank my Census Bureau colleagues for joining me and helping support our speaker today and for making this webinar possible. I will be handing things off to our presenter in just a moment, but first want to go over some housekeeping items. We'd like to encourage participants to use the Q&A panel and WebEx to submit questions throughout the presentation. To submit questions, make sure to use the All Panelists option from the drop-down menu. I will be using the chat panel to send you helpful information, including instructions, site links, and contact information. So again, for questions, please use the Q&A panel and make sure to use the All Panelists option to submit. And use the chat panel to find links and helpful information. At the end of the webinar, we will take your questions through the WebEx audio line. For this portion, we will ask participants to use the raise hand icon in WebEx to indicate if they have a question. You will be allowed to come off mute to ask your question, but just remember when we call your name to please unmute yourself. A quick note, the Q&A session will focus on the platform data.census.gov and updates. We will not be able to go in depth to address questions on other census products, the data collection process, disclosure avoidance, or methodology. As always, we are recording the webinar today, and all the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website. Thank you again for joining us. Now I'll introduce our presenter, Tyson Weister. Thank you, Tyson.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you all for joining the webinar this afternoon, data.census.gov News and Updates, October 2024. My name is Tyson Weister, and I work on the communications team for the Center for Enterprise Dissemination. What we have planned today is to cover the latest updates, as Maria mentioned, from February through October. I'm going to show you each of those updates one by one in a slide format, and then we're going to take a dive into the live website and show you some of those more major and exciting updates in another way in the live environment so you can become more familiar with them. And we'll open up for your questions. Before we get into those updates, I did want to provide some context and also thank everyone on the call who has provided feedback to us on how we can improve data.census.gov. We have launched as a preview site in 2016, officially took over the previous platform in 2020, and we continue to push out system updates in an incremental development process. This means that we are continuously seeking feedback from users, prioritizing and analyze the suggestions that come in, choosing some of those to develop solutions around, testing them internally, and then releasing them to the public. So typically you're seeing these releases happen roughly every month or so, and we are going to focus on summarizing those releases since February. So at a high level, some of the major updates that we have pushed out include a brand new feature to search by address, a variety of mapping improvements, a new API button that allows you to get the API data that's powering the table you're viewing, improved messaging throughout the site, geography profile enhancements, a dedicated applications tab, and some improvements to the navigation of the population pyramids application, improved default views, both in the filter panel and in your table results, some other API updates and technical updates. And of course, we always fix defects with each release. So let's go into these one by one and give you a summary of what these updates are. I like to not make you wait till the end. I'm most excited about address search. This is the ability for you to type in an address and then get a clickable link 4 different Census Bureau geographies that the address falls within. So here we're seeing the trickiest part is getting started. So you'll just look for the geography pin icon that you're seeing on the screenshot on the left-hand side. Once you click that icon, a pop-up window will appear on data.census.gov that allows you to type in an address that will search the Census Bureau's geocoder for that address and then give you what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the address card. That's the clickable links to common Census Bureau geographies. So notice that there are small geographies here, such as blocks, block groups, census tracts, congressional districts, school districts, state legislative districts, as well as a couple higher level geographies. And we're going to demonstrate this on the live site once we get over to the demo. Moving on to improved maps, we have heard from data users throughout our development that they want the ability to download boundary files directly from data.census.gov rather than having to download the data from our site and the boundary files externally. We now have integrated those directly into data.census.gov in GeoJSON format. So if you'd like to create your own maps outside of data.census.gov, anytime you have went through the steps to map out different geographic level on our site, you'll notice that there is a button at the top of the Maps tab called GeoJSON that will start the download process for you to get those boundary files in GeoJSON format. Another map improvement is the ability for you to take our formal map variable titles and edit them as you see fit. So if you'd like to shorten a label, for instance, this one reads population for whom poverty status is determined, % below poverty level. Maybe you would like to shorten that just to % below poverty level. You now have that capability by clicking the edit icon at the top of that label and typing in a new label. With our maps, we also updated the table view associated with the map. So the map allows you to choose a single estimate from any of our data tables and map it out across all of your geographies. When you click the table button at the top of the map, that has always given you just that one estimate, not the whole table, but just the estimate you chose across those geographies. With these last releases, what we've added is margins of error. You can see if you're in a table that has them, which would be tables from the American Community Survey, they will be shown with your estimate. They will be displayed by default, and if you'd like to turn them off for any reason, there is a toggle at the bottom. We also added the ability for you to download the table of just this single estimate, and we'll explore this in the live demonstration. Beyond mapping, we also added a new button that I mentioned for the Application Programming Interface, or API. We've heard from users that they want stronger links between data.census.gov and the API, which is what data.census.gov is powered by. We have now added that button. So anytime you navigate to a table, you'll see an API button, and when you click it, it will give you 2 different API links, as they're called here. There's a data link and a metadata link. You may also know these as API calls or API queries. The first one gives you the data that is powering all of the numbers you're seeing in the table. So if you wanted to make that data request from the API, you would be able to copy that first data link. And then the second metadata link gives you more information about the data set related to the product that you're viewing. So for instance, other example types of API data requests that you can get from American Community Survey subject tables in this instance, or variable names and descriptions. Another thing that you'll see is a common theme with the releases that we've been working on since February is improved messaging. So a big one is the American Community Survey. We added messaging to indicate the ACS 1 year has a population threshold of 65,000 people or more. So that's what you're seeing here on the screenshot, is that new messaging called out anytime you are clicked into an ACS data table from the 1-year estimates, you will now see this language. It also gives you more detailed links if you'd like to learn more about the differences between ACS 1-year and 5-year estimates and guidance for when to use each. So we get lots of questions from users who access a table and do not see the data for all of their geographic areas, and this is a step in the right direction in helping them understand why. Other improved messaging is more descriptive messaging when you try to navigate a table and you're not able to see it on screen for a variety of reasons. For instance, the first screenshot, which is more so on the right-hand side of the screen, says data not available. We added some updated language to indicate that data is not available for the specific filter combination. So this is just giving you a little bit more context that you've added filters that are too detailed for the table that you're clicked into, and you might want to adjust those just to give more context around all of the possible reasons why data may not be available. In addition, we also added for more advanced users the ability to view the technical details for these messages. So on the bottom left side of my screen, you're seeing an expanded example of the technical details where the table is too large to display, and it is giving you a little bit more context that it has exceeded the maximum number of columns, which is 1,000. This table has 6,445 columns, and it also has exceeded the maximum table size. Other messaging updates is a renamed button at the top. You used to see a hide button at the top of your table. That button would only allow you to hide or show columns. We have renamed that button to columns, one to indicate that it applies specifically to columns, but also that it has the ability for hide as well as show. Similarly, we updated through the zip download process. There used to be a button in this pop-up that said download.csv, which is one of the files contained within the zip file output. For clarity purposes, we have also renamed this to download.zip. If you're accessing our data tables on a mobile device, you can now click on different data cells on that mobile device, and if the full label is not displayed automatically, you'll get this pop-up window that shows the full label. So here you can see in the screenshot, I've taken a screenshot from mobile view of this table that has sex ratios, males per 100 females. You can see the ellipses in the screenshot was not displaying in full on the mobile device, but upon tapping it, we can read the full label. We also updated messaging throughout the filter panel, the question mark icon, which existed before. We added some clarity in the pop-up message to specifically say that the lock icon was added dynamically as part of your search and that you need to start a new search to remove the filter, whereas the X icon indicates the filter was added manually and can be removed without starting a new search. In the geography profiles, you may see special characters. In the past, they would have just displayed those special characters. You can now access a question mark icon and explore a pop-up window that explains the meaning behind these different special characters. So moving away from messaging improvements, wanted to look here at enhancements to the geography profiles. We are working to make these more meaningful to you. And as part of that, throughout these releases, we've had a number of updates, especially with bar charts for ancestry, industry, and occupation. We have ordered these instead of randomly choosing different categories to appear first. We have sorted these in descending order. So you're going to see the most prevalent ancestries, industries, and occupation for the specific geography you selected at the top of the bar charts, and the less prevalent ones towards the bottom. And in the case of industry, we are actually going to the underlying data table that these bar charts are sourced from and picking the top 10 industries that are relevant to the geography you selected, choosing those to be as the categories that will show in the bar chart, and also displaying those in descending order. So just a very helpful update for you to see information that's most relevant to the area that you've searched for. Also, throughout this period, we've added a dedicated tab at the top of your screen. It's called Apps. There are currently 2 items that are housed within the apps. One is for microdata, and the other is the population pyramids application. So these are very helpful in that you no longer have to know, memorize, or have bookmarked the direct URLs to get to each of these apps. You will see them listed here automatically, and you can access them as well as others that may be added in the future. While we're talking about apps, we also wanted to note here that we made some improvements to the population pyramids application just to make it easier to navigate. As you're working through the Pop Pyramids application, you'll see on the left-hand side at the top, there is a progress bar that is now made clickable so you can navigate to the different sections of the profile seamlessly. And at the end of the profile, there's always been this widget that allows you to pull up the population pyramid for a custom geography. We've added some navigation improvements there, one being underlining under the geography name. You can see there's dotted lines under Denver County, Colorado. That's a clickable link that gets you to the geography profile, so you can view not only the specific numbers that go along with the population pyramid image, but also a variety of other data you can explore. We added source statements to clarify that the visual we're seeing is coming from the most recent American Community Survey 5-year estimates. And then we also added through the URL and all of the clickable links to share the population pyramid by email or social media that the geography selection was relevant. So this is saving the geography selection. If I were to share this population pyramid link, it would take the user directly to this view for Denver County. Also with this release, there were improved default views throughout the site. A couple of those were for the filter panel itself. For the geography filter panel, we updated the results in each of those lists to be sorted by geography ID instead of being sorted by alphanumeric code. So this works really well for geographies that have numbers in the title of the geography, such as congressional districts, state legislative districts, census tracts. Those are all now appearing in the geography list as expected, where you see congressional district 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. In the past, you would have seen congressional district 1. Underneath that would have been congressional district 10, congressional district 11. You would have had to scroll quite a ways down to get to congressional district 2. So definitely look at this as an improvement, especially for geographies with numbers in the names. Other filter panel improvement in terms of the view is that we added a new category for international trade codes and lumped all of the applicable subcategories within this broad category. It just makes the general codes option that you see on the left-hand side less cluttered and like items sorted together. And default improvements for table views, we added recently an update where many geography selections will default you to see data for more geographies by default if you're working with American Community Survey data tables. So specifically, this update applies to most options to select collections of geographies in a single click. So I mean things like an option to select all counties within Indiana, or all places within the United States, When you make those selections for geographies in bulk, in most cases, the site will now default you to the ACS 5-year estimates instead of the ACS 1-year estimates. And this is helpful because it will show you data for all counties, regardless of how many people are in each county, whereas the 1-year estimates would only provide data for counties with 65,000 people or more. So we are assuming you've selected all counties. You probably want to see the data for all the counties, and we will automatically place you in the product that does that. A couple other API updates for those of you that are using the application programming interface. If you request a free census data API key, you'll notice that the page has a consistent look and feel with other pages across census.gov. We also added an API status page on api.census.gov/status. This will show you the up-down status of the census data API as well as the census data API key signup functionality. And if you click into any particular date, you'll also be able to see response times over time as well as average response times. And with these releases, we also pushed out technical updates. Those are things that you don't see on the front end just yet in most cases. So in particular, we have future improvements to the microdata access tool, as well as technical updates that will allow you to create custom charts. We're going to talk more about each of those at the end of the webinar, but did want to note that a significant amount of development work has been already put in for these items and that you'll be able to see those in the coming months. If you'd like to learn more about the complete set of updates, details about fixes to defects or other technical work, I did also want to point out that at the bottom of this slide, there is a link to developmental update notes. So that is where you will see each of these data.census.gov system enhancements summarized for you as those releases happen on release day. So now that we have looked holistically at different updates that we've pushed out since February, let's take a look at some of the most exciting ones for you on the live site, starting with address search. So for this example, I'm ultimately going to pull up a table that has the percent without health insurance for the census tract that a specific address falls within. For this demonstration, I'm going to be working with 3500 John A. Merritt Boulevard in Nashville, Tennessee. So going to the live site, we'll go to data.census.gov. Again, the trickiest part of address search is just getting started. So you'll want to click the geography pin icon that you'll see in the single search bar, not only on the landing page, but throughout the site. That will give you the address pop-up window where you will type in the address you're looking for. So here I have 3500 John A. Merritt Boulevard, Nashville, Tennessee, 37209. And you'll click search. When it finds a match, you'll be taken to the address card. Otherwise, you'll get an error message and you'll want to double check your spelling and abbreviations. This gives us a clickable list of popular Census Bureau geographies that this address falls within. We were interested in accessing percent without health insurance for the census tract that this address belongs to, and we can see Census Tract 136 is shown as the listed option, and it's in a blue clickable link. So go ahead and click Census Tract 136. This will add that census tract as a filter in the upper left as if you had selected it using the filter pathway below. And then from here, you get a list of 2,519 tables that we have on data.census.gov for this particular census tract. You can narrow this down just as you can with any other search. So if we wanted to add that topic for health insurance, on the left-hand side, there's the filter panel. We can choose health and health insurance. And this will narrow us down to the 46 health insurance related tables that we have available for Census Tract 136. Now I'm ready to view the actual tables, so I'll click the Tables tab at the top, and we can see the list of those 46 tables. We can click between the different titles in order to see them on the screen. I'm going to look at the first one for S2701, Selected Characteristics of Health Insurance Coverage in the United States. It shows the civilian non-institutionalized population in the census tract, the total number of people with health insurance, the corresponding percent. And I can see there's 575 people in the census tract without health insurance, which is 10.7% of the population. So we hope that you find this address search functionality useful. And again, the geography pin icon does exist in the single search bar, and it follows you throughout the site as you are working. The other thing I wanted to mention is if you weren't familiar with what census tracts were or these other geographies that this address falls within, you can also click the Maps tab at the top. And the site works extremely well anytime you've selected a single geography and click Maps. It will automatically take you to the area you've selected and typically zoom you there. And this will familiarize you with the geography. If you didn't know what Census Tract 136 was already, you can see different street lines and street labels populate as you zoom in on the map, so you get a better sense of the area that you're working with and getting data for. Great, moving on, while we're talking about maps, I wanted to choose another example and show you some of those new mapping features that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. For this example, I'm going to map the percent of the population that's Black or African American for all counties in the United States. So going back to the landing page, I clicked the US Census logo to start fresh on the landing page, and I'm going to go through some steps to create a map, but my goal is mainly to show you again these new features that were released. So I'll go through some of those steps a little quickly, but under the advanced search here, I click on county, and I'm going to choose all counties within the United States and Puerto Rico. We'll give that just a moment to load. Anytime you do make a selection, it is adding it to the filters in the upper left, and then the site is also going through and hiding all of the options that are not compatible with your selection as it's reloading this filter panel on the left. So I'm just going to leave that one selection, all counties within the United States, and click search in the lower right. I'll click tables at the top. And I happen to know the data I want to show you is in DP05, ACS Demographic and Housing Estimates. Notice that we get this message, the table's too large to display. We did again update some of our messaging throughout the site, as well as these technical details, which is saying that the actual size of this table is estimated at 11.8 megabytes, which exceeds the maximum size that will display by default. Anytime you do get this message, you can see that there's a link to open the table anyways. You may need to click it twice, but if you do get that the table's too large to display message, we always remind users not to be discouraged by the message. You can always download the data, you can map the data, and in many cases, you can still end up viewing the table data on the site as well. So the message is giving you a heads up that it may take a moment for these data to load, but usually it happens relatively quickly. So we can see here we're looking at data from the American Community Survey 5-year estimates for all counties. On the left-hand side, I see different categories of the table, and we see a race section, and I'm going to choose to look at race as race alone or in combination with one or more races. This is the maximum number of people that identify as Black or African American, even if they whether they only identify as Black or African American, or even if they also identify with other race groups, these numbers will include all of those populations. We can see the first county has an estimated 12,478 or 21.2%. So just always like before creating a map, familiarizing myself with the table, we can see that this particular table does have a data value I'd like to see across all my geographies, as well as much more information that is beyond what I need. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click Maps. On the left-hand side, you'll always want to make sure that you're still clicked into the table that has the data you want to make a map of. Here we can see the orange bar in blue shading for DP05. You'll want to make sure that the map is set to the correct geographic level. We can visually see that we're looking at county level data. You can also confirm that the layer was set to county. Again, these steps should be happening automatically for you. The last thing is to pick the data variable from that large table we saw on screen. Which one do we want shown on our map? You can change that in the upper left. So it just picks the very first option by default. This is ordered in the same order that the data rows in the table were. Remember, we had to scroll down to the race section. And then we looked at race alone or in combination with one or more races in Black or African American. So once we make that selection, it will choose to map out that value across all of our counties, and we'll give it a moment to load up here. And we see our data. So these counties with darker shades of blue have higher Black or African American populations compared to counties in lighter shades. So what I've shown you so far isn't new functionality, but now that we are viewing a map, I wanted to point out, if you'd like the boundary files for these counties, that is available to you with this new GeoJSON button. If you'd like to simplify this label or change it in some way, you can go ahead and make some edits by clicking the edit button, making your changes, and clicking outside. And if you'd like a table with just this data value and not cluttered with all the additional information on the table, at the top of your map, again, is that More Tools button and Table. So what's new with this release is margins of errors are also displayed. They're displayed by default. You can toggle on or off the margins of error as you see fit. And another nice feature of having the data in this view is this table happens to allow you to click the data values by choosing the column headers at the top and clicking the column header. It will sort the information in ascending or descending order. In addition to that, there is a new download table functionality at the bottom. Once you choose that, you'll be able to click the export at the top, and this will give you not the entire table, just the one estimate that we were interested in. And if you did any sorting prior to clicking download, that will be reflected here as well. Right, moving on to our next example is the new Applications tab in improved app navigation. So I just want to show you the dedicated tab, how to access the population pyramid application, and a couple of the updates along the way. Here on the data.census.gov, again, what's new is this Apps tab. It allows you to access the microdata access tool or the population pyramids application without having to memorize or bookmark the URL to get here directly. With these set of updates, you can continue to navigate through the population pyramid using these buttons on the side. You can also take advantage of this new clickable navigation progress bar. At the very end, we also have some navigation improvements we talked about that are specific to the widget that we're seeing. Here I'm going to type in Denver County, CO for Colorado, and press enter. that will update the population pyramid displayed from the United States to the geography I'm interested in. With this update, again, some of the changes were a URL that includes the geography as part of the URL. So if I save this and open it in a new tab or share it with someone, they are going to come directly to this view with the population pyramid for Denver County. We see that source statement clearly identifying where the data are coming from and the clickable link to the geography profile. So it's really helpful here. I can see visually that Denver has a large population between 25 and 29 and 30 to 34. So a large share of young working professionals likely. If I'd like to see the specific numbers, clicking that Denver County, Colorado will take me to the geography profile. And in the interest of time, I may not wait for all of this to load, but it gives you some key statistics at the top. And then when you scroll down to populations and people, the very first thing that you will see is the population pyramid, and it will have the exact numbers that go along with what we were just viewing. And of course, other data of interest, such as ancestry. Remember, these were bar charts that we've sorted in descending order, and other helpful data from the Census Bureau as an entry point to help you learn more. Moving on to the last example, I did want to show you the updated logic for viewing American Community Survey data tables, the updated messaging, and the new API button that you can take advantage of to access the table data directly from the API. So for this example, I'm going to look at data for all counties in Indiana. So on the landing page, I'll click Advanced Search, County, Indiana, and I'll choose all counties within Indiana. It will work to add that in the upper left, so I'll give that just a moment for that selection to register. And then what I'm going to be looking to do is click the search bar or the search button in the lower right. Then I'll click Tables at the top. And specifically what I wanted to show you is the new logic as it applies to American Community Survey data tables. You can see the source statements are shown at the top, and we see that the third result happens to be a table from the American Community Survey. So here I'm clicking DP05, ACS Demographic and Housing Estimates. So with this update, the site has registered that I've selected data or selected a geography, all counties in Indiana, that I probably want to see data for all of the counties and not just some of them. So it's put me in the 2022 ACS 5-year estimates, so the most recent ACS 5-year estimates by default, which allows us to see data for all counties, even those with smaller populations. If I still wanted to access the data from the ACS 1-year estimates, I can manually change this. There are multiple ways. One on the left is the view all 27 products, and you can switch between different vintages over time back to 2010, and you can choose between the 1-year or the 5-year. So if I wanted these data from the most recent ACS 1-year, I can manually change that here. You can also do this by clicking the product drop-down menu at the top and choosing the different options. And these will provide you data, as you can see, from ACS 1-year. Our first result is for Allen County, Indiana. So we're no longer seeing Adams County that only had, I believe, 35,000 people. And you also see this note at the top that ACS 1-year estimates are published for geographies with 65,000 people or more. So a couple updates there that are helpful, both in terms of the default that you're placed into and the messaging. The last thing I wanted to point out and explore is this API button. So here at the top, you'll see more tools and API. This first option will give you the data from the API, that is powering the table you're viewing. So it includes the geography selection, the table, and it gives you all of the data. So again, we wouldn't expect everyone on this call to be using data from the API necessarily, but just at a high level, what we can see here in the results is the first set of information are all of the labels associated with this table. And then we see the second set of information. These are the data for our first geography that we've selected. And it will continue as you scroll down for your different geographies. We wanted to also give you a heads up for what we're working on in the future. We continue to incorporate user feedback as we work to make additional updates to the site. And specifically, we're working towards making new applications, adding additional visualizations, and updating the look and feel of the microdata access tool. I wanted to give you a sneak peek for what those look like. One is the microdata access tool, or MDAT design updates. If you access the microdata access tool now, you'll notice that it doesn't look consistent with the rest of data.census.gov. We are working towards parity, so giving this a refreshed look and feel. There's also a few functionality improvements along the way that we have implemented thus far. Also, a big update is that we're in the process of adding a dedicated charts tab. So this will allow you, just as I was able to make a map of any estimate from a table, the charts functionality will allow you to make bar charts from any of the estimates in our table and give you that flexibility as well. Both of these updates, the microdata access tool and chart updates, again, are not presently live on the site. They are something we are tentatively looking to release later in this year. All of these updates are based on feedback, so if you have any suggestions for how we can make the data easier to access and improve your experience, please shoot us an email at census.data@census.gov. You may also send your data questions to us. And to stay alerted on the different updates, we encourage you to sign up for email alerts. You can scan the QR code or visit the link, type in your email address, and that will subscribe you to the data.census.gov newsletter, where we will inform you of the latest system enhancements, data releases, and educational opportunities. Today's webinar was focused on summarizing the recent improvements we've made to the site. If you'd like to learn how to use the site from the ground up, we have different hands-on workshops that we offer on a monthly basis. There are 5 different topics. 3 are data.census.gov specific, where there's a basic, advanced, and mapping workshop. Again, these are free to join. You will get live demonstrations and opportunities for hands-on individual exercises. And at this time, I will switch over control to Maria, and we look forward to hearing your questions shortly.
Thank you, Tyson. In just a few moments, we will begin our question and answer session. Today, we'll be taking your questions over WebEx audio. If you have questions related to today's content, we invite you to use the raise hand icon located next to your name in WebEx. When we call your name, please unmute yourself to ask your question. Before we move on to the Q&A, I'd like to invite you all to give us your thoughts on today's webinar through a post-webinar survey form. What that means is that the evaluation survey will appear in a browser automatically when you exit the webinar. If you have any notes for us to help improve these webinars, or if you have any ideas on other topics that you'd like to see covered in the future, please take a moment to fill out the survey once we wrap up the webinar. Additionally, if you have any questions remaining after our session concludes, or if you prefer to email us your questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any of the email boxes listed on the slide. If you are a member of the media, you may contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. And then for general data.census.gov questions from the public or for training requests, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination. With that, I did want to go ahead and while people are queuing up, I did want to read one of the questions from the Q&A, Tyson, that might be helpful. So let's see here. There actually were a few that came in. Oh, actually just a couple of comments, but I will get to those after we start having people queue up. But the first question is, how can I see Black alone data, non-Hispanic or Latina, on the visualization map for detailed races and ethnicities in the United States and Puerto Rico from the 2020 census? And this is coming from Anthony.
Great, thanks for the question. So let me go back to the site here and I will pull up a different data table option. So I showed in my demonstrations today data from the American Community Survey. You mentioned that you wanted these data from the decennial census. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the table that has information and that will help the explanation. So give me just one moment. There are a variety of different tables in products, and one is DP1 from the decennial census, that's demographic profile. So this is kind of most similar to the DP05 that we were looking at from the American Community Survey, and you'll see that the data are shown here. One of the sections shows Hispanic or Latino by race. There's also a similar section in the DP05 if you decided you did want these data from the American Community Survey instead. Currently at the Census Bureau, we're collecting data in accordance with Office of Management and Budget Standards from 1997 that Hispanic and race are two distinct concepts, but these data show the information cross-tabulated. So you wanted the Black alone was what was indicated in the chat, non-Hispanic. That would be this section of the table where we're looking at Hispanic or Latino by race. You would go to the not Hispanic or Latino section, see Black or African American alone, and these are the total counts in percentages corresponding with that.
And then someone else also asked, could you show how these data will show up on a map? I think that was also part of Anthony's question as well. If you would like to just show that mapping capability.
So the same thing here, you would click over maps, and just like we did for the American Community Survey, any of our tables, you'd want to make sure you were still clicked into the table that had the data you want to make a map of. You would choose the variable. So we scrolled down to the section of the table that had Hispanic or Latino by race. You would go to the non-Hispanic or Latino section, choose Black or African American alone, and then you also would need to have made geography selections. So I had done that in my first example by selecting filters. Here I have the state layer, so I'm just going to select some states at random, and we can see the data are now being shown at the state level. You can choose any one layer of geography. In this case, I'm showing state as my layer, and then you need to make the corresponding selection, whether you do that through the functionality here on the map itself, or if you made the filter selections prior to getting to this point or at this point on the left-hand side.
Thank you, Tyson. I am just double checking to see if there's any other questions in the chat before I move on to our Q&A through the WebEx audio. I do see the same person, Anthony, has a hand raised. Lisa, if we could unmute him. I don't know if it's still the same question or it might be a follow-up question.
So I wanted to add context because I put it in the chat before I saw that there was a Q&A. So like the answer for my question didn't capture the context of what I'm trying to get at. So I first was looking at the 2020 U.S. Census data through that visualization map, the detailed races and ethnicities in the United States, and I first looked at Black alone by state and then zeroed in on county, and then I also was able to pivot between within counties, also look at individual ethnic groups. So whether someone was African American, whether they checked off being Nigerian, or whether they checked off being Jamaican. But the issue is that when I first looked at that map, when you select like what you're going to look at, it said Black alone, which I thought included Black alone, non-Hispanic or Latinx. However, when I then tried to zero in to look at populations of Black people within census tracts, so I looked at Gwinnett County in Georgia and looked at like census tracts within two of the census county divisions, that particular part of the census website, the 2020 Census Demographic Data Map Viewer, that part of the website then separates people between whether they checked off Hispanic or not. So when I looked at Black alone, non-Hispanic or Latinx, it then shows a slightly lower number of people compared to what I saw within the visualization. And so I've had to then now account for the number of people who also checked off Black alone and Hispanic or Latinx. So what I'm wondering is, because of how the data is not consistently provided between the demographic data map viewer and the visualization map for detailed races and ethnicities, I'm wondering on that first visualization map, the detailed races and ethnicities map, if there's a way for you to also be able to see Black alone, non-Hispanic versus Black alone, those who did check off Hispanic, because that map shows all who checked off Black alone, regardless of whether or not they checked off Hispanic, but the detailed demographic map separates that. And so I'm navigating my PhD research, like I want to make sure that as I'm looking at data, that all of the numbers for a particular county like match up. And so as of now, it doesn't. So I have to account for that.
Yes. So I would recommend connecting with us by email, and we can go in more depth offline. What I will say, one, you've mentioned the 2020 demographic map viewer a couple times. That is outside of what we manage here in terms of it being separate from data.census.gov. That's a special tool in addition to the information on data.census.gov. So I personally am not an expert on the demographic map viewer and can't speak to the specifics there. But what I can say is that we are the primary, when I say we, I mean on data.census.gov, you'll find the full set of decennial census data tables. So just because you don't see something in a way that makes sense for your analysis in the 2020 demographic map viewer does not mean that the data doesn't necessarily exist from the decennial census. It may not just be part of what's included in that mapping tool, which only has a subset of data from the total 2020 decennial census. So if you connect with us by email, we can further explore and point you to the best tables for your analysis. That may mean that you would get the data in a table format. It may mean you may not be able to create a map directly as you would like, but we would be able to explore the nuances of your analysis and point you to the best data sources.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm just double checking to see if there are any other raised hands. Just wanted to thank everybody for the comments and questions in the chat as well, or excuse me, in the Q&A as well. Just going to triple check, but I think we are all good. I do not see any other raised hands. Tyson, if you want to move
Maria,
on.
there,
Yes.
there is a raised hand.
Oh, I do see that one just popped up. Can we please, unmute Cecilia? Oh, I don't know if she. I don't know if Cecilia still has a question. Oh, she just wrote in the Q&A that she cannot unmute herself. Lisa, if we could try and unmute her.
Tell her to go ahead and raise her hand again, and I will unmute her.
There you go. Okay, that just popped up. Her hand is raised. And it looks like, Cecilia, you are unmuted.
I just have a quick question, and that's related to the previous question on the maps. I work for an institution that frequently they ask us for a visual representation of where immigrants are located in 3 different states. And I was looking, the first part of my question is, does census makes a correlation between national origin and language? Because what we mostly are interested is to see languages spoken that is frequently correlated to place of origin or ethnicity. And my second question is, can census help individuals or institutions to create, let's say, a map, if I were to work here, of the District of Columbia, Virginia, and Maryland for immigrants, for example, or language spoken, or low income? Is there something that we can create with this data ourselves with the support of census expertise, or is something that is not possible? We will have to do a separate jurisdictions.
Your questions feed in really well to additional content that I wanted to wrap up with. So first, I will answer your questions about place of birth and language. So we do have data from the American Community Survey covers more comprehensive information. So the decennial census does not collect information about languages spoken or whether someone was born in the United States or outside of the United States, but the American Community Survey does. That's the largest household-based survey at the Census Bureau. And you can access those data. They're provided fresh every year. They go down to small level geographies. So yes, you can get data from the Census Bureau via the American Community Survey on languages people speak at home. It also provides information for how well those people speak English. So you can look at limited English speakers by different languages, and you can look at data across different places of birth or for the foreign-born population overall. And those concepts are both in addition to the concepts we've already discussed on race and ethnicity. So beyond that, in terms of getting additional help, one of the resources that we've highlighted here, census.data at census.gov, you can send data questions or if you want some one-on-one support. We also have some information available for training requests. So if you are a national organization, we typically provide training requests through our team at ced.cedsci.outreach@census.gov. And we also have this resources page that you can visit by using the QR code, the link in the upper left, or the help button. This will take you to more recorded videos, webinars, tutorials, and answers to FAQs to help you make the most of data.census.gov, including mapping. But in addition to this, we also have local data dissemination specialists. These are your local point of contacts. They're located throughout the country, and they will have someone assigned to the area that you or your organization is based out of. So if you'd like to connect with them, they also provide customized individual data user support and trainings. You can reach them at 1-844-ASK-DATA or census.askdata@census.gov.
Thank you for that question, Cecilia. We did have a couple more come in. If we could unmute Anthony again, please.
Hi, I have one other question about the American Community Survey. So in the way that you can look at the 2020 census and again, going back to my research looking at Black alone, and I can see different ethnic groups within that, those who checked off if they were Jamaican or if they were Nigerian. Can you also see that type of information in the American Community Survey as it provides estimates? So am I able to see the estimated number of people who would be Jamaican under Black alone or another group under Black alone, or does the American Community Survey only focus on race?
So the questions, there's a couple nuances to your question. The short answer is I'm not 100% sure if the ACS data tables cover the level of detail that you're interested in, but the questions as they are asked, I believe at this point are the same between the decennial census and the American Community Survey. So respondents would have the option to choose a checkbox for Black or African American and free write in a response such as Jamaican or some other free-formed write-in box. I do want to note that that is a newer option that was added for the Black or African American and the white options for decennial census. So I'm not sure how far back that information could possibly go in terms of historical availability. And again, I'm not 100% sure what types of data tables from the American Community Survey are available, if any, that cover that level of detail that you're interested in, but would encourage you to write us in on that question as well, and we can investigate further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And we do have another raised hand. If we could unmute Luz, please. Luz, you are unmuted.
To say thank you so much for summarizing the phenomenal work you guys done. I worked as an enumerator back in 2000, and it's like music to my ears. So thank you so much for capturing all of these advances that will help us have a better understanding and landscape. And in the future, unite sort of that race and ethnicity big elephant in the room so we can be more united and our resources can be allocated properly. So thank you so much. Amazing work.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of the hard work that you've done. We wouldn't be able to have any of these data without the hard work that goes into collecting it, both from the staff on the ground and the respondents that are responding to the decennial census and other products. So wanted to thank you for that. And also, as you mentioned, race and ethnicity, I did want to note, just for awareness on the call, that the Census Bureau is working in future data collection to update our data questions for race and ethnicity in accordance with updated OMB standards. So it's something that we're aware of is very important to users and always looking to improve and keep up to date with the latest concepts and standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luz. I'm just double checking one last time. I do not see any other raised hands that are popping up at the top of the attendee list. So I think I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today. And if you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to census.data@census.gov. But with that, I can turn it back over to you, Lisa.
Well, thank you. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.